Hello everyone, this is Colin once again. I'm making this video because I just watched a video by a hater here on YouTube, Occam's Quran 3, and this guy, basically, he made several new videos. He's been on a roll lately, but one of his newest videos is talking about it's called Islam and Desecration, or something to that effect. Basically, the whole point of his video is that apparently throughout history, Muslims have lands they've entered and controlled, they basically would demolish, or essentially they would convert churches into mosques. And he paints a negative picture of this. He's basically saying that because Islam is evil because they have converted people's former places of worship into mosques. Now, what's interesting is that he rains off a list of several buildings. To his credit, he mentions several key locations that used to be cathedrals or churches, and then therefore were converted into mosques when Muslims took over the said areas. I'm not going to go through each one and refute each one, but let's just discuss this concept of one religious group coming into an area. The religion becomes very popular in that area, and a holy site is transformed into basically a religious site, a place of worship for the majority people, or the majority religion. Now, the way he paints the picture is that because Muslims did this means Islam is evil. Okay? I mean, he doesn't say that word for word, but that's his implication. Well, this is the problem with people like Occam's Quran 3. This is the problem I have with people who generalize or have double standards. Because, like I've already refuted in so many videos in the past, with regards to people like Occam's Quran 3, they'll make a statement, they'll make an argument against Islam, and they'll make the argument against Muslims, but they will not make the argument against other people. And like I've already proven, Occam's Quran 3 is basically likes kissing the butt of every Jew and Christian that he runs into, and likes to propagate the idea that the Bible is, the Bible's the true word of God, the Quran's just a knockoff, and things like this. Now, I don't know exactly what actual religion Occam's Quran 3 actually follows, but it's obvious that he hates Islam and is in bed with Christians and Jews. Now, having said that, I want to know why Occam's Quran 3 did not mention the desecration of holy sites done by Christians upon other people's holy sites. I would like to know that. Because if the fact that Muslims throughout history converted churches into mosques, if that makes them evil, then why doesn't he attack Christians or Jews for doing the same thing to pagan holy shrines? Why doesn't he? I would like to know that. Because if that is the standard by which we're going to deduce that a religion is evil because they convert the holy sites of other people into their religious holy sites, then that means that pretty much every world religion is evil. To my knowledge, almost every major religion has done this. At least, safe to assume, the Abrahamic faith, and I would believe Hinduism as well, were holy sites that used to belong to one group that then become holy sites of someone else by a conversion process. But let's look at two main places. Let's look at two main places that he mentioned. He first off mentioned the Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque. And the thing is that in Islam, the Temple Mount is considered to be a holy site in Islam, and they have all due respect to the holy site in that it is shared by both Jews and Christians. And looking at Jerusalem, I want to know why Occam's Quran 3 did not mention when the Caliph Umar entered Jerusalem, and he was met by the Patriarch of Jerusalem, the Christian leader of the city of Jerusalem when it was taken over by the Muslims. I want to know why, when the time for prayer came, the Patriarch of Jerusalem offered the Caliph Umar to pray in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. But the Caliph Umar refused on the grounds that he said, if I were to pray in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, my followers would convert it into a mosque. They might convert it into a mosque, so therefore I'm going to pray in this little shack over here. And the little shack ended up becoming a mosque, and the Holy Sepulchre to this day is still a Christian place of worship. In fact, many places where Muslims settled, there are still to this day there are still synagogues and churches that date back even before the rise of Islam. For example, I want to know why Ahmad's Quran 3 did not mention the very old synagogues and churches that are in Yemen, Oman, Syria, Egypt, and how come these places have been under Muslim control for so long, yet they have never been forcibly converted into churches, into mosques. Why didn't he mention those? Alright, he mentioned about a dozen, okay, out of all the places he mentioned about a dozen, yet he never mentioned these churches that are still churches to this day, or synagogues that are still synagogues to this day, even though they were under Muslim control for years. Same with Hindu temples, because as we know, Hinduism is the majority in India, yet Muslims ruled that for years, that land for years. Why didn't he mention any of this? Why does he try and paint this picture that every church, every synagogue is converted by Muslims? Why? Forcibly. Why? Especially, let's talk about the great mosque in Damascus. Let's talk about that one. Okay. Now, again, he paints this picture that Muslims forcibly converted this building into a church. Well, what's interesting is the majority of the mosque, as it stands, was not actually a church. Okay. If Ahmad's Quran 3 actually knew the true history of this building, he would know that the land on which the mosque in Damascus actually stands, prior to this, used to be a temple of Hadad by the Armenians. Okay? Then, it was a temple of Jupiter during the Roman period, and then the Christians converted it to a church to dedicate to John the Baptist during the Byzantine period. And you can find this information simply on Wikipedia. However, I'm reading this from, I'm getting this information, it's identical to that you see in Wikipedia, with the exception of the Temple of Hadad in the Armenian era, from an art history textbook that I have. So, I find it very ironic that he didn't mention the fact that this land has passed through many different hands. So I guess now, therefore, the Romans, the Christians, and the Muslims are all evil people now, because they each changed hands of this land. But he doesn't even give you the full details about what happened. Okay, when the Muslims conquered this in 636, according to a book, the source for this is Umayyad Mosques. What's interesting is that it didn't even affect the church. The church was still there, but the Muslims just built a mud brick structure so that they could pray. However, during the Umayyad Caliph, Al-Walid I purchased the land from the Christians. So, why did Ahmad's Quran 3 mention that the Caliph purchased it? He actually bought it from the Christians. And then the church was demolished after it was purchased, and then the Great Mosque was built. Okay? So, I think what we're seeing here is we're seeing a lot of double standards. We're seeing a lot of hypocrisy, because like I said, if Ahmad's Quran 3 is going to make a video, and by the way, this is just, he's making more than one part to this video, because the part I just watched was part A. He's probably going to make a part B, maybe a part C, who knows. But I find it very ironic that he has this double standard. If you're going to say that Islam is evil because it happens to purchase churches from Christians or synagogues, but does not convert the buildings, he talked about the Zoroastrians. Yeah, the Zoroastrians converted to Islam, so therefore their old temples, they willingly had those buildings converted. He gives no references to Muslims going in and pounding down the doors and forcibly converting churches, synagogues, or Zoroastrian temples or Hindu temples into mosques. He doesn't provide any sources for that. He just says, well, they converted the buildings, so therefore they're evil, etc., etc., etc. Well, whatever. That's such a hypocritical double standard because, so many groups, Hindus, Christians, so many religious groups have done this to buildings that you cannot just blame Islam only on that sort of merit. So thank you everyone for watching. Peace be with you all.